plants in real quick?
Yeah,
Say
sure.
hi.
Bring in this is our special guest.
This was gonna be their placeholder. It's our plant.
All right.
Hey.
Great intro, everyone. So hello, welcome to Question Block, Secret Loft's live talk show. This week we're talking about plants. I am houseplants. What do we say? Deep houseplant music. Yeah, and I'm Dr. Wires, also known as Alex, one of the co-owners of
Wait,
Secret
you're
Loft.
Dr. Wires, or are you?
Oh, do I have a plant name?
No, are you Wires of NYC?
Oh yeah, I'm Wires of NYC. I go by many names, much like a lot of
plants
that we'll be discussing. Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought you wanted like Wiresteria.
Oh yeah, what would
some
your plant name be?
I'm gonna have to think about that. Who are you?
I'm Arielist. Ariel Istima Ist.
Well, you want to hop on?
Yeah.
We're joined
Yeah.
by a special guest this week.
Oh yeah, here, I'll move down.
So many things.
We have Lily Wolf, who is a succulent expert.
An expert.
So that's the Instagram there.
Yeah.
So you gotta,
Yeah, I'm
you gotta
moving down.
squeeze.
Get in the frame.
I'm moving down.
Okay.
Wait, we're all gonna get in the frame.
Okay.
This damn narrow frame.
Here, you can move down even more, Alex. Okay. And get in there. There we go. Here.
Yeah, perfectly
Yeah.
natural way for talk show hosts
Yeah.
to sit.
Oh yeah. Do you want some flowers?
Oh, thank you.
We'll just go
Yes.
two at a time.
Yeah.
So yeah,
No,
I'll be over here.
yeah, we'll just shift over when we interview Lily.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whatever.
So anyway, what are we talking about plants? We researched all kinds of information and factoids about plants from their early history of like the geological history and development of plants to who made the first garden.
To the best plants for your Instagram
Mm-hmm.
and why.
Yeah, to how, and we're gonna have a practical section on how you can grow
Or how you can not kill your plants.
or not kill your plants or grow great house
Or
plants.
stress them. Lily's very good at stressing the plants to
you
make
too
them
could
beautiful.
be a plant influencer.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I've improved over time.
No, but isn't that
That is what I do.
Yeah, she
With
stresses
mixed
the plants
results.
to make them more beautiful, like
Yeah.
a good life coach.
Yeah. So, I guess I'll start off. I researched the history.
Okay.
So here's a quiz for you two. Who do you think made the first garden?
Nebuchadnezzar.
That's a really good guess. Nebuchadnezzar, the
Oh,
Babylonian king,
Yeah.
featured famously in the Bible. So that goes back a long ways. So that's a
Yes,
good guess.
I have written down
It's a
how
good guess.
far.
They think, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon might have been built by Nebuchadnezzar. We'll get to that in a bit.
Okay.
But even before him, someone made a garden. Any other guesses?
Was it the Earth?
It was the Egyptians.
Oh.
The Egyptians had the first gardens.
They always do.
Ingenious people.
So we'll be very clear on our etymology so nobody yells at us on the internet because people have to do that. And gardening is distinct from farming. Farming is large scale and it's for food. And it's usually grains. We're going to talk about gardening for like aesthetics.
Gardening is for beauty.
Yeah. However, a key thing that they talk about in many articles about gardening is control. That's like a key term they use. So it
Is
can't
that
be.
why I like it?
Yeah, it can't be wild. That's why you're into it. Yeah.
That is why.
Controlled growing
That's so
of plants.
funny. It can't be controlled growing of wild things.
Well, because there's gardens of wild flowers, but they're under control. So so the first recorded, I guess, history of aesthetic gardens would be Egyptian pharaohs, and so that's because that, as we know from when we talked about the pyramids, that's freaking 3500 BC. It's super long ago. But the first written record is in the Book of Gilgamesh. And Gilgamesh was
Always goes back to Gilgamesh.
Always goes back to Gilgamesh, the original epic poem, I guess. So Gilgamesh, just in bragging about being king, he's like, 1/3 of my city is gardens. But then apparently they were palm orchards, so it's kind of farming, so it's not even clear that really counts. yeah, so that Gilgamesh was like around. They think around.
He's the first humble bragger too.
Yeah, they're just gardens. It's like a third of the city.
Yeah, it's NBD.
So I think that's around 2900 BC. They have records in China. They had like ornamental like
Bonsai.
I think that's more Japanese, but the Chinese probably had them too.
Yeah, they did.
Okay. I forget what the tree was, but yeah, they had ornamental trees in like 2500 BC, so like early China, and then yeah, like various rulers kind of had them, and then the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, they think may have been in Babylon, but there's no evidence in Babylon in the ruins of it, which are in modern day Iraq.
There's a really funny true crime entire podcast about the Hanging Gardens of Babylon where they're like suspicious. Like Nebuchadnezzar was he was crazy. Would a crazy man really do that for his wife? And it's like hours. So yeah, if you want to learn more about the speculation.
Well, hey Richard, Chelsea Fire.
Hey, we're talking about plants.
So yeah, the story of the Hanging Gardens, and this is confirmed in a couple different contemporary sources, is that he built it for his wife, whatever king did it, because she came from a hilly country, and so he wanted to build like a big terraced garden. And also, they weren't hanging from anything. It's just like a mistranslation of the Greek. So the word means, like the word for terraced is the same as the word for hanging.
Oh. Hanging sounds cooler.
I know.
Yeah.
I always envisioned like anti-gravity machines, and it would be like really sweet.
Or a ton of air plants.
A ton of air plants, a living wall perhaps.
Yeah.
But no, it was just like a terraced garden. But they had a clever pump system for 700 BC or whatever. Yeah, so they had like early plumbing to bring water up to the top of the gardens to run it all the way down. And they think it might not have been in Babylon even, but it might have been in Nineveh, which was the king Sennacherib, who is like he's the king of gardens. He's the coolest.
I guess
like,
he did it then. If he's the king of gardens,
the coolest like confirmed ancient gardens were in Nineveh, and he brags about them, walking through his like orchards and stuff. So yeah, he had the real like show off there was agriculture was hard still, and like in the Levant in this area it was like pretty like arid, so like being able to like pipe rivers around and like make water pumps and stuff was like pretty badass in like 700 BC.
That is pretty badass.
Yeah. Do you think were the plants, whoever it was, were the plants from there, or were they like shipped? Or
were
they shipped?
No, it was like a menagerie. So like, because they went on all these conquests, conquering other countries. So they talk about in like Sennacherib's like I guess memoirs, whatever his historians put down on tablets that they found, was like an inventory of like, yeah, that he had like ibex and like African animals, and he had all these pines from like Europe that they'd like brought in.
Wow. It's like a zoo.
So yeah, it very much was. Zoos were originally called zoological gardens. Because cultivating animals, not that different.
Oh wow.
But yeah, so that's your kind of early gardens, and then they one other factoid. The reason they think it was like humans have been cultivating plants for a long time, but it was really farming. But the first like domesticated breeding of plants happened really long ago, like basically the beginning of history in like 9000 BC. They've dated it to. So basically, as soon as the last ice age ended, humans were out there like cultivating plants.
Wow.
Which is pretty cool. All right, so then we'll fast forward. I'll wrap up the history of gardens. So then throughout like the Middle Ages, it mostly was like monasteries where people would have little home gardens or whatever, but like the whole aesthetics like got lost.
Right, because of Catholicism,
And the
which
Middle
also
Ages, just generally sucking.
which also always comes up. Yeah.
As always happens when we talk about a cool thing like music or art or
Like,
whatever.
What happened in that like chunk of time? What
happened in the Dark Ages? You know, like, oh yeah, the Catholics just ran everything and made it boring.
Yeah.
So anyway, then it basically in like the 1600s, sort of start of the Enlightenment. So in 1660, there's this book published called Garden of Eden by Sir, I think Hugh Platt is his name, and it's a book on how to grow houseplants.
Oh wow.
And so that's kind of like the first in like modern history record of like.
With your illustrations.
Yes, there were.
That's cool.
The books all had great illustrations back then. So yeah, Hugh Platt, father of, I guess, your modern like houseplant, good living. He was the original Martha Stewart, if you will. So then in like the 1700s, as like, you know, international sea traveling like caught on, people started like importing like plants and learning how to grow them, and then nurseries became a thing, in part because glass technology got better, so you could make greenhouses. And as we'll talk about later, like almost all houseplants are tropical plants because they don't have a resting season, a resting period, like a lot of other like plants from like colder climates. But yeah, so that's 1700s, 1800s. Who made plants cool? Who made anything cool?
Who made the
Anything that's
rock
like,
stars? I don't know.
Anything that's like cool now. What group of people?
Oh, the
in history-
Victorians.
The Victorians made houseplants cool.
Was it oh my god, who's the guy who like the penis piercing was named after? Was it him?
Jacob's, was that a Jacob's ladder?
No, that's the just the single one, not the multiple
Oliver
ones.
Twist?
No.
What is this?
I don't know.
Penis piercing?
I don't know
Yeah,
what the penis is.
it'll come to me.
I didn't come across that in my research.
Because he also made
horticulture.
Christmas trees cool. Him and his wife.
Oh, Charles Dickens?
No, okay, I have to look at it.
I thought Dickens made all right. I thought he made Christmas cool. Well, anyway, the
No,
Victorians
he just made Christmas. This guy made Christmas.
The Victorians made Christmas cool, but they also made houseplants cool. That was the first. So it's like 1800s. Became a middle class thing to have houseplants. Prior to that, windows were too small in most houses, so if you put plants in your window, you would just get no light in your house. Like nobody's willing to do it.
Sorry, Prince Albert. Did Prince Albert?
No,
make
it was not Prince Albert. Oh, okay. Yes, Prince Albert is the piercing.
Yeah, that's how I remember the name, but I forgot it.
No, I don't think he had anything to do with plants. He just wanted him to.
No, Prince Albert made like him and his wife made Christmas trees cool. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, they're probably in the story somewhere. But yeah, what I mostly saw was the Victorians made houseplants cool. And then really interesting, in the first half of the 19th century, or first half of the 20th century, houseplants fell out of fashion. And it actually like wasn't in like the 1920s, 1930s. You would think flappers would be all about houseplants. Not really.
Mm-hmm.
It actually was like a reaction to the Victorians. A lot of like, Americans and like the British in the early 1900s were like,
the plant prohibition.
we're done with house. I don't know why. They were just over it. They were like, that's for farming, and farming's lame. And then it's not until post World War II then houseplants came back into fashion. So you can look up on Wikipedia, there were like, then it starts being there are plants every decade that are fashionable.
Ooh, can you say some of them?
Yeah.
What I most remember in the post World War II was like having just a few like smaller plants, like just like flowering in your windowsill was cool, and then like in the 60s it was to have like one or two like big plants, so I guess like a big snake plant,
Oh,
or like
yeah, I can imagine that.
a big, even like a palm, like just a palm in your house.
Yeah.
But just one or two like big ass plants was the thing.
So, like, my parents had very 70s decor in their home. And they had two big plants, one of which is a snake plant. I have that plant now. Or it's
They last a long
propagations.
time.
It's propagation.
Yeah.
So the 70s is when people just went overboard in typical 70s excess is what I was reading. So like having like, that's when like having a living wall, having like a whole bower or whatever in your house.
Like
this.
Yeah, like our backdrop
Like
here
our
is very
living wall.
70s. And then I guess 80s through today, plants kind of come and go. There are trends, which is where I'm going to hand it off to you two.
Yes.
Because that's your history.
I have my list.
Any questions?
Any questions?
Any questions
From us?
of the history? One, I'm going to save a factoid for later in the episode. But I'm going to hand it over to you to talk about contemporary.
I have two historical plant.
Oh, sure.
I have two plant history people.
Okay.
That are cool that I found that you didn't mention. Can I talk about them? Yeah. So there's, this guy actually is not cool, but he did a couple cool things, and there are a couple cool things about him. It's Linnaeus. who the reason why he's not cool is because people who do like classifications, they tend to
Was he racist?
Yeah. Like you always see this, that you're like, oh, they developed the taxonomy for like this and really changed the way we think about, you know, the categories of plants and animals and like the, you know, the genus and species, and then also they just have to relate that to people.
I think Mendeleev is still cool, but yeah, Linnaeus was like into eugenics.
Yeah. So before Linnaeus, there were Latin names for things, but they were extremely long and they were just like the longest thing ever, and it sucked, and there wasn't any like order to it. And Linnaeus did a lot of things with animals as well, but in terms of plants, he kind of took a wild guess, but he was correct in classifying plants. Like, he basically put their flower structures to be like closer down to the species.
He classified plants by how they have sex, right?
Yeah, exactly. And people, they were pissed about that because they were like, a plant would never. Literally, they were like, plants, they are too beautiful.
What is it? Yeah, gymnosperms or whatever are like the flowering plants, I think.
Yes.
And then many plants don't, or like plants give off spores or whatever. Like,
yeah, and so he kind of,
he did that.
He went down.
He's like, plants have been evolving how they have sex, and people are like, no. So
there's domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, and then genus and species, I believe. And so like, that's, you know, you can say that like for plants they're in like the kingdom plant A or whatever, and then it's basically like branches from there, exactly.
Yeah.
Some groupings that matter, like what kind of root system they have, or like are they on the earth or in the water, like those things contribute to this classification. A cool thing about him, or a funny thing, is that he was kind of a troll. So if someone was a jerk to him, he would name a plant after that person, but it would be like Jerkius, Ophius, you know, Alexis or whatever.
Do you have an actual example of one?
I have like sexual.
I love naming an ugly plant after someone.
There was a guy that he did that, and I totally forgot. So okay. I had it in my brain.
An exercise for our listeners too.
It's basically plants with suggestive. There's plants with like suggestive names. There's Phallus Empidicius, it looks like a giant penis. I'm looking at the picture right now.
Empidicius.
Yeah.
And I guess this was supposed to be an insult?
So this one, it's actually just what it looked like, and he was like, that's what it looks like.
He's like, that's a penis plant.
Yeah. There's like some boob plants.
Mammillaria, I think. Crassula vaginitis.
Yeah. Vanilla. Oh, the
Crassula
vanilla. Yeah. Crassula vaginatus. There are many plant species bearing epithets like vaginale.
Oh yeah, there's a nipple fruit.
Yeah.
Solanum mimosum.
Yeah. So
those boys. Okay.
Oh yeah, so these are like some surprising names, like Narcissus. It means narcotic due to the plant's narcotic effects, which is interesting because now Narcissist is named after.
I thought it was a plant that was really feeling itself.
Yeah, that was like the plant of the nymph Narcissus, right?
Mm-hmm.
But no. So.
Ilex vomitoria.
Yeah, it's the Yapoon holly. It's poisonous and it provokes vomiting.
Mm-hmm.
Gross. Yeah. So.
Nice.
That's like about the taxonomy and the naming, and then
Can I ask, when like, when was Linnaeus around time period?
He was in the 1700s.
So he was, like, way ahead of Darwin.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool that he like, guessed but got it right, basically, how the, like... Because, right, like, post-Darwin, the taxonomies are generally based on how stuff evolved from each other. They want to have a big tree of, like, species, like, branching off.
Yeah.
But Linnaeus just guessed based on how they have sex with each other.
Yep.
And he was right that that's actually how plant evolution, like, also branched out.
Yeah, and he went on lots of excursions to just look at plants and stuff. He was like the ultimate Swedish gap year, like the endless gap year. He was just exploring.
I think all the famous scientists
all
from the
of these like
16,
Swedish
1700s
ones
were.
too. Yeah, they were just like just experiments.
All the London guys, they're like, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like third cousins with this like Duke, so I get to just research. I get to do science all the time.
And then there's this guy named David Hossick, and he was also from the 1700s. There's a book called American Eden about him, and he basically formed the first botanic gardens in New York, and there's a plaque for him right near Rockefeller Center. There's like this little hidden plaque, David Hossick. And what was really cool about him is that he was a physician, and he kept asking the city to build a botanic garden or botanical. I read that you could say either. Either is okay.
So this guy was an American who made the botanic garden?
He made the first one, not the Brooklyn. Like
where was the first one?
I forgot. In New York.
Is it
the
Bronx?
The first one in New York. I don't know. I forgot. That's not important, really. You can look it up. I like to talk about like his character kind of stood out because he was not fighting, but just like asking all these different like city councils and like groups and the government to build this garden because he had been to Europe and they had all these medicinal plants there. And they had botanic gardens. You just go and like get these medicines. For example, people were using mercury. Still, they were drinking mercury as like a emetic, or like just to make you just purge.
As we know,
everything
constantly throughout like 16 and 1700s, people drinking mercury for health reasons.
And he was like, you can take these other herbs, which will just make you sweat a lot and help you.
Mercury's not an herb, but...
Well, no, but he was saying, you don't have to do this thing that's very...
You don't have to be doing this.
Well, because the cure... He didn't quite know that, like, the mercury was killing them long term. He just knew that, like, he was talking about people who drink mercury to make them, like, just purge everything in their body. And if they're sick, that would make them even weaker. And he was like, look, you can take these other things that... They're just going to make you a little bit hotter and you'll sweat.
So,
yeah,
an American, like, guy who, like, rediscovered, probably for the millionth time, like, medicinal plants.
Yeah, okay. After the Catholicism hid them, basically. Yeah. And the city, because at this time in the 1700s, there were plants actually all over the street, and there were horses in the street, and so the government, the city, they were like, we're not going to spend money on this, like... There's plants everywhere, just use one of them. And he was like, no, but we could get them shipped in the greenhouse. And he eventually just was like, I'm going to do it myself. And he got this plot of land and he built these gardens. And then, there's like this whole other saga with like, eventually the city wanted to buy them. Or I think maybe Columbia University wanted to buy them, and he thought they were gonna do the upkeep too, but they were just like, we'll just kind of have them, and there's this whole after story. But it was cool. He was actually best friends with Hamilton, and he was at the duel, like Hamilton's duel, and he was
Hamilton and Aaron Burr.
He was also friends with Aaron Burr, and. There's like correspondences between him and he told Aaron Burr that he was going to have a heart attack. Like really, he was like, dude, you're gonna You're really like pushing your limits
I feel
here.
like this really would have improved the play Hamilton if they had included
They had the
botanical
botanist.
garden.
Yeah.
Facts in it.
Um,
All right. So let's go to our succulent correspondent.
yeah.
Correspondent.
Yes.
Yeah. Here, come sit in the middle seat.
Oh, okay. I feel like that suggests that I write things.
Correspondent.
report.
You report.
Report on succulent.
I'll try.
Yes.
See.
Oh, just that. His botanic gardens on the outskirts of New York City. There you go. I had to
What,
pop that in
Hoboken?
there. Probably.
The outskirts of
Yeah.
New York
It was like in Jersey.
So,
welcome, Lily Wolf.
Lily, tell us about your history with raising plants.
With the plants.
How'd you get into that?
That's a good question. I don't totally remember. I think I was living with you in the weird space that we built rooms in at the time.
Former textile factory.
I do remember. So my brother Will had a wedding where they were offering the guests little tiny succulents as gifts.
Nice.
Right? Like
That's
they do that for some
cool.
weddings. And so I thought that it would be cool to, grow the few succulents that I got from that and keep them as sort of a symbol of like, I don't know, my brother's love for his wife. I think they did the same thing. They have like some really big.
They still have them?
Yeah, and they've gotten huge. So
Oh,
Nice.
wow.
some of mine have too, from there. But then I just kept adding to those.
Okay.
Where do you get your succulents? Like, mainly, where's your favorite place to get them?
So, probably Etsy.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you want to buy succulents in particular, that's probably the best place to go. Like, as far as I know, there's a lot of like serious growers on there. And Etsy, I think, like does a pretty nice job of making the whole process seamless.
That's so
and like
cool.
they have like the review system, so you can figure out like which sellers are actually going to send plants that look like the plants in the pictures.
Do people, they substitute like more common succulents for the more valuable succulents?
I don't think you could get away with doing that on Etsy. Like, it would be hard to do, and it would tank your rating.
It'd be like fake drugs. They're like, yeah, if you care for these perfectly, they will blossom and it'll be like super awesome.
There are like rare succulents that is a thing, and people can charge like $200 or $300 or $400 for like a specific rare succulent. Which will probably die when you get it, because you're not good at taking care of that. Or maybe you are, and that's why you're buying them. But they don't necessarily like look all that much cooler than the regular ones that are like $20 or whatever.
That's so cool. So how many do you have now? Like, would you say?
They've expanded. So I put them in bowls for the most part, because otherwise you end up with like 100 tiny little things of a succulent, and it gets difficult to manage. And I think the bowls look nicer. So I have, let's see.
They probably appreciate hanging out with each other too.
I don't know if they do. Like,
do they seem like a solitary plant?
I mean, like, I'm pretty sure that plants have, and I don't know what it is, and it would be cool to know this actually. They have ways of sensing the proximity of other plants, like pretty certain.
We know about the soil fungus.
Yeah, so I don't know if it's through like mycelium, or it's like something else, but my plants, they know when there's like another plant over there, and they don't want to like get in too much in that plant space, which is annoying because like that's what makes them look cool and live together in the bowl. So I'm still trying to work out that detail, but it is kind of dope that like they just know that the other plant's there and are like, oh, okay, I'll leave a little gap between us.
Yeah.
That happens in forests as well. It's called crown shyness.
Oh, really?
Well,
That's awesome.
People can look up on the internet. Wikipedia has a great picture, but if you're ever in a forest, look up at the canopy. None of the leaves actually overlap or touch. They will come just up next to each other, and the tree carves out its own space. And it's basically because the tree that are next to each other, it's like whichever one is lower is like, oh, there's no point in continuing to spread my leaves that direction because I'll get shaded by the tree next to me. So it's called crown shyness, where trees don't touch each other in the canopy. They each carve out their little space.
That's amazing.
I guess it's tough. Yeah, it's like some people, if they overshadow you constantly, you're like, I can't be around you.
Oh, plants are wild. Literally.
But plants are wild. Yeah.
Oh, we've got our tagline for the episode.
Plants are wild.
Sorry, so I interrupted you. Yeah, how many succulents?
So you have,
do you
you have a bunch of...
So it's probably an average of like 10 per bowl. And I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them.
Wow.
And honestly, it's probably more than 10. So I probably have like 70 or 80 plants at this point. It's just succulents.
So wild.
I have other plants as well.
Oh my goodness. Oh, and what kind of other plants do you have? You said you have your snake plant.
Yeah, I have a big ass snake plant. That is, so my mom had a snake plant that she tended to when I was growing up. That was pretty big itself. And then she created 4 propagations to give to her kids.
And for the...
That's
what's
really
a propagation for the...
Oh, yeah.
We'll define... Because I noticed that, like, plant people, they all use the scientific names. Like, there are all these, like, Instagram people, and they're, like... Yeah, they'll use the Latin name, and then like they'll be like propagation. I had to learn all these.
Yeah, it's like the name of the thing.
Yeah,
I don't know what else you call it. But it's replicating the plant. So like, you want to make another of this plant, so you will propagate it. And succulents have like specific ways that they will propagate that like other plants can't necessarily.
So how would you? Okay, so this is I have a Christmas cactus here.
Yeah.
You can describe, but you can like show. Like, so you wanted to
cactus.
propagate. Thank you. I think now that I've done research, I think I've overwatered it and maybe given it a little too much sun. But
Looks okay.
we'll fix that. So if you want to propagate this, what would you do?
So I do not know how to propagate a Christmas cactus specifically. I mean, if it works like other succulents,
I think, let's pretend it does.
Then like you could propagate it from a leaf. Which
So-
is like a cool thing about succulents.
You would
so,
take...
like, you can like snip off a leaf from this guy, or in like, succulents that I guess people know or I'm more familiar with. You have like a rose-shaped one, right? You can pull off a leaf.
Oh, yeah.
And you stick it on the dirt, and it starts growing
You
a
stick
new
it-
one at the end, and you're like, what? Like, how are you doing that? So eventually you end up with like a little baby succulent at the end of that leaf. I think they tend to like more water than like your typical big succulents.
The ones that you're propagating.
Yeah, to get the propagations going. And then eventually the leaf, like the original leaf, will like kind of dry up once its baby's gotten big enough. And then you just have a very small succulent.
Yeah.
That's so crazy.
Yeah. I have a few propagating now in my soil.
And
if we're
then-
counting those too, I've got like way
Oh.
more.
That's so... And then, so you have the snake plant, and then you have like your other non-succulent ones, like your...
I have regular plants too. I have a big monstera. I have a bird of paradise. Lots of people like bird of paradise.
Oh, yeah.
It's like a popular plant. They get really tall. What else have I got? I've got like a couple of snake plants. There's a jade, a couple jades, lots of pothos.
Pothos, yeah.
Those guys are super easy. Like, they'll withstand anything.
So do these plants all have different watering and lighting schedules?
Yeah.
Or are they how do you keep track of all this?
I have like an app for it. Most of the time I don't consult it. I just like remember kind of.
I guess so.
What's the app?
But you've got several different schedules going on at once, right? You're
yeah.
Like, these are every 3 days.
Okay.
These are every 5.
Yes. I'm not that precise about it. Like most of them are either you water them every day.
Mm-hmm.
I water them every other day, or I water them rarely. Like the succulents are just like, I think it's been a while. Like, okay. Like they look, like they're ready. They tell you.
Do you miss them?
Not succulents. There are certain plants that I missed. Like I have a rubber plant. I missed that. There's like another one that I missed too. Some red thing. I don't even know what that one is. I have to go find out.
Oh, red. I thought you said bread thing.
No.
A red thing.
Yeah.
Ariel, do you want to plug that app? That
Oh,
flower identifying
I want to know what
flower
app you
identifying.
use, Lily, and then
Honestly, I haven't consulted it in a while, and I don't even remember. There was one that I don't remember what it's called.
So there's an app that I was using it's called Picture This, and it's
Okay. Yeah,
you-
plant IDs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but if you point it at a plant, it's like really good at you take a picture of it. It's really good at like identifying it, but it'll also tell you the care. But it doesn't have the schedule of like the watering. I do have like a general like guideline of like looking at the leaves and stuff about like how you know how much like water and like if you have a plant. I guess this is supposed to be a monstera. I think.
Oh no, that's something else.
No,
that's some viney
ivy
situation.
This one?
Monstera will have actual Swiss, like it's a Swiss cheese plant.
Oh,
It
okay.
balls all over.
The Swiss cheese deal.
Okay, so like if you have any of these like leafier green, like the darker green, they need more. They have more chlorophyll in their leaves, so that means that they are more of a shady. They're like in the rainforest, like, and they're trying to get whatever sun that they can because it's just the sun that's shining down through the canopy. So they have to have these like really big leaves, kind of like a solar dish where they're like, hello.
So bigger leaves indicates that it doesn't get as much sun.
Right. So it means it's a little more shady, little shady bitch. And also if they have like leathery or like smooth leaves, that probably means that like leathery smooth vinyl, I guess, leaves, that means that the water
that means they're made out of plastic, like these guys.
It means that the water will just drip off of them, which means they don't need to conserve the water, which means that they probably live in an environment that has a lot of water, which means that you should water them a lot. So they're shady and they need water. And then if they're like succulents, they have sometimes like hairy or furry or like
I've got some fuzzy ones.
Fuzzy leaves, or more like woolly sort of the spines even. That means that they're trying to, whatever water goes on them, they're like trying to keep that in them as long as possible. So that means they don't need as much water, right? Because you're trying to recreate the environment that they came from. And then a lot of the succulents, they're like not this kind of green, right? They're like a more dustier kind of green. They're like maybe a purpley or like a silvery-er kind of.
I don't know if they're silvery. They can definitely change colors, and you're right, they tend to not be super dark green.
So that means they get a lot of sun because like they're trying to reflect like the sun, like they're like to keep from burning, like and they don't have as much chlorophyll in them, so it's kind of like a smaller solar panel you can think of. So that means they like more like.
I have birds of paradise on my shelf right now.
Oh, do you? Let me see.
I think that's what those are.
I don't think that's what that is.
Let's take a picture of it with the
It's
picture
sort
of
of just a cartoon. Try to get it onto the Twitch.
So what are ways that you know that like your plant, this plant needs water? Like it
likes to shrivel up. It's just
shrivel,
it like, kind of crinkles. I'm like, I see you there. But, like that's fine. Like it's a desert plant. Like that's what it knows how to do. And then you give it water and it fluffs back up and it looks pretty good. And people overwater succulents a lot. Which is like, that's their death knell.
It's the biggest killer of succulents, I think.
Probably. Like, they don't like that. That's not what they were, like, made to do. So they get root rot, and root rot is very sad, because if your plant gets it, it's probably a goner. Like, you can sometimes kind of save it if, like, it hasn't reached all the parts of the plant. You can, like, cut it off and try to propagate it, but, like, yeah, you're gonna see like the stem turn black and like the leaves turn black, and you're like, shit.
So does it help to have, because you use bowls, like does it help to have more ventilation on your pot?
Yeah, well, drainage hole is useful, and my bowls, because I select them for their aesthetics, tend to not have that, which is not ideal.
Give yourself a little ceramic drill bit. Maybe.
Well, but
I mean, that would be cool.
You put rocks on the to help. Yeah.
So I do put rocks in the bottom, which helps with like the drainage situation. Also, a lot of the times the soil that I'm using is pretty gritty, because succulents tend to prefer gritty soil. So water I think tends to evaporate from that pretty fast, or relatively fast.
Yeah. So you're currently you've been checking out the extreme sport of extreme temperatures for your succulents.
No.
Which is it's like a pretty well-known thing, is that some succulents you won't get them to flower unless they experience a cold spell, because that's like what they're meant to do in the wild.
I don't know about the flowering. Honestly, the things that make succulents flower, I don't know too much about that. But I do like to stress them out because that makes them pretty. And there are different things that will cause them to be stressed. There are 3 main categories. Number 1 is light. They need lots and lots of light, and the more light you give them, the more stressed they will be. It's sort of hard to reproduce the amount of light that you need in a New York City apartment. So
you're trying to do the desert.
Yeah. So I have essentially a couple miniature suns in my room, made out of tube lights, and it's very bright in there.
For those listening, where'd you get your tube lights?
Amazon mostly. So I made a light. Because most of the tube light fixtures that you will get are ugly, and I don't like ugly things. So
you made a nice minimalist tube light.
I did. I bought some custom cut clear acrylic panels. They were like a little bigger than 2 feet long. And I bought some single fixture T5 tube lights and double-sided clear tape. And I double-sided taped the tube light fixtures to the acrylic panels and then just sort of flipped it and clamped it to the underside of my shelf, is how I did it.
That's awesome.
So you've got a bookshelf with its own built-in lighting,
And
under lighting.
Yep.
Is there like a spectrum that you're looking for? Like a special
White light.
white light? Okay.
Yeah. I think a lot of people are familiar with like purple light as being a good photogrow light, and it is, but I think white light, for something that needs a lot, is supposed to be even better.
Everything, yeah.
Yeah.
So do you leave it on like the whole time? Like the whole time? All day? Like
I have mine on timers.
Ah.
Yeah. So I have like one of those outlets that's like a smart light that's hooked up to my phone. And I schedule those.
Nice.
So, if I leave on like vacation, they're fine. They like turn themselves on and off, and succulents are great in that you don't really have to water them very often. So I can actually like leave my apartment for like 2 weeks at a time, and the plants will be fine.
That's really cool.
At least those plants will.
So there's light. That's one stressing.
Yeah. So another one is lack of water. If they get too thirsty in some succulents, that will help bring out the stress colors. And then the last one is temperature. Some of them will get stressed out by cold temperatures. So I was experimenting with this, and at first tried out putting a couple of my bowls overnight in my fridge. And I checked on what the typical temperature of a fridge is before I did it, because I didn't want it to be too cold, and it seemed okay.
I came across this in my research. People sometimes put their succulents for weeks.
What?
In a fridge, in a cool.
For
Yeah,
weeks?
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, to simulate I guess a sort of a winter period.
Yeah.
Is how you can inspire flowering. So
That
it's
makes
not
sense.
crazy to think you could do it overnight. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just like, for weeks, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Right.
People are like, cold storage for a couple weeks.
Right.
I'm like, okay.
So
That's a
like,
crazy MTV Cribs tour.
that worked. It was making them, or helped making them pretty for a week. So I bought a mini fridge for my room because my housemate is kind of not that into bugs, and I didn't know how he was going to react to having a dirty bowl in his refrigerator. So I was like, all right, before he comes back, he was on vacation. I was like, I'll get a mini fridge.
I mean, they're air purifying. He should thank you.
I don't think he'd see it that way. But yeah, so I got this mini fridge, and it was really nice, nice looking little thing. And I put 2 balls of succulents in there. And what I didn't know is that the back of the mini fridge gets very cold. And a person with hubris, I put it on the coldest setting on the first night, which is stupid. Don't do that. And so when I took them out in the morning, the bowl that was closer to the edge, not the back, looked good. And I was like, oh, pretty. And then I take the other one out, which was my favorite one. It was my favorite bowl of succulents, and they had been growing in there for like a year. They had frozen. They froze. And it took me like a little bit to process like what had actually happened to them. I was like, why do they look so weird? Like their color is wrong. They're like brown, like strange looking green shades. And I touched one, and it was, like you would expect, like a frozen thing full of water to feel.
It's a little popsicle.
It was, yeah.
Oh, no.
And I realized like what I had done. And I was actually like kind of devastated by this. I managed to kill most of them. Nearly all the plants in that bowl.
A handful did survive, though.
Not even a handful, like one.
One of them did survive.
Yeah, I was hopeful that the oldest one would make it through. It didn't. Like, they get root rot from that, if they're not, like, outright just done for. So over, like, the next week or two, I kind of, like, watched them go through like their death, because they have like death stages too.
Oh wow.
Yeah, like
That's great.
it's really interesting. Terrible but interesting. They change colors as they're doing this. Like in the first 24 hours, some of them turned bright green, like they had once been, I don't know, like purple or something, and they would turn like bright green, and you're like, what is doing that? And then they start to
I wonder if it's
kinda...
like an immune response. They're trying to like pull out all the stuff. They're like
Yeah.
ultra chlorophyll mode. We need
I think
to,
it's because
like,
they're not
get
using.
energy
So
or
normally
something.
they use. I think they just like use the chlorophyll as it, like to make their food, and they just like eat. They just eat it as they go, and this might be like they're not eating because it's like leftover.
I
Yeah, I was
really have
thinking
no idea.
It might be like a human response. Well, right. Well, like we'll get a fever to try to kill off like an infection or something. So maybe there's some similar
It's
sort
their
of
spike
like
proteins.
I mean, I did think of it like you did. I'm like, oh, they're trying like whatever is left.
whatever stuff. Yeah. To like save themselves.
But they died. And it was sort of difficult to watch too, because I was hoping that they wouldn't die.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't like remove them all from the bowl. I like let them be there for a while, and yeah, after maybe like 2 weeks had passed, I was like, all right, I have to start replacing these so I don't look at this and feel sad for another month. So that was weird, because it was a lesson, I think, in patience, and like, I thought, okay, I have this down, like I can just introduce them to this new fridge on like the coldest setting, and then I killed living things that I genuinely cared about. So I was like, all right, maybe like reevaluate certain things, and be careful.
And wait, okay, so I'm back to the stressors. So we have temperature, light, and then you
and
said
the cold, yes.
temperature.
And
right,
keeping them dry.
keeping them
lack of
dry.
water. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that will express the colors.
Yes. It's hard to do, and it varies by plant, which is like another hazard of keeping them in bowls, because they all have different requirements. Yeah, so I try to like figure out if they're flourishing in their particular setting, and then move them to a different one if they're not.
That's so interesting.
Is that like so stress means they're having trouble, or stress means they're like exuberantly showing off their colors because they're having a great time?
So, I mean, the idea of a great time for a plant is like a little weird. I don't know that stress is quote unquote good for the plant, but I like to think of it like going for a run stresses me out.
It's exercise. You're exercising.
Yeah.
Well, so like to go back, like Darwin, right? Like said, there's like environmental stressors which cause organisms to adapt and change, and right. So you can think of it.
I know. I always
Like
try to
that,
think
right?
of like the evolutionary like reason for the thing, right? And so like, why would you show bright colors just because like your environment is becoming like a little more unhospitable?
Yeah. So I forget which chemical corresponds to the colors. I think there are actually two. And it's. I have to go look it up. Actually, I don't remember what these two are called.
It's like a byproduct of like plant adrenaline.
Yeah, like it seems like the kind of thing, right? Like from what I know about like colorful plants, right? It's often to like because they have a symbiotic relationship with insects or birds for like pollination.
It's not
and it's to
that.
attract those. So this must not be that.
It's not that.
Or it's to show off that they're poisonous.
I will say that
And to provide like a warning.
I know that I'll talk a little bit about air plants, which are they're succulent they're very except they don't have roots, but they flower and then they slowly die. But they have little pups, like they self-propagate sort of like at their where their roots would be. They're like these little baby ones, so you can collect those, and then the mother plant that's just flowered basically dies after the flowering.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is at the end of its life, it's like trying to pass on its genetic material, right? It's like I think that the reason for that plant flowering is like, okay, I'm gonna die, like I need to like pass on my genetic material.
Yeah, no, some of them will they'll give off babies before they die, or if they're dying, because they're like, oh, like I need to produce an heir.
An heir.
An heir
to inherit this bowl.
To the bowl,
It will take my place when I.
So like it is. I think sometimes you will see like maybe propagations of the root when the parent plant is dying.
Yeah, air plants are a type of plant I did not know existed.
Yeah.
But
I definitely want to get some, because they're awesome.
It turns out, yeah.
Because they're awesome.
Most of the time when you see like a living wall, it's an air plant, which are plants that don't grow in soil.
Right. I'm just looking up their scientific name.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Tillandsia, which is air plants. And they look like, I guess they look like those like spidery plants. Or like little teasel balls. They kind of look like succulents, I guess, but they don't have a root system. They have these kind of like buttholes in their leaves. Like you can't, they're microscopic. This is the best way I can think to describe them. Like, and when it rains, like they kind of open up.
Stoma? Are they stoma? I think that's the word.
I forget what they're called.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't think it's that.
Buttholes.
They're like these little channel. I mean, they sound like circular little channels, and they like open.
Okay.
When it rains, and they pull water into the plant, and then when it's done raining, they like close up really, really tight, and they sort of lay flat. And then there are these other parts of the plant that fluff up to keep the water in, to keep it from evaporating. And they get all their nutrients from the water and from the air, like from dust and different minerals and like dust.
Yeah. Do you want to switch places? I feel weirdly in the
No, I
middle
was
of
going to
this
ask you
thing.
one more.
You're like,
I was going to ask you a few more succulent questions.
Okay.
We were just taking a little
detour,
detour into air plants.
Into air plants.
I did want to ask if you have advice for people out there because, like, I'm not growing 60, 70 plants. What advice do you have for people who want to start growing houseplants?
Houseplants in general.
Well, let's take the question in two parts. We'll do succulents first, and then houseplants in general, because you have other plants as well.
Houseplants. I mean, most of the time you do need a certain amount of light in your home. So if you live in a dungeon or in one of those New York City apartments that's basically subterranean.
Sorry, hipsters of Brooklyn.
Yeah.
You may be our target podcast audience,
Yes.
but this episode is not going to help you.
I mean, if that's you, and you really, really want to buy a snake plant. I don't know, that will probably live.
Probably would. Against all odds.
Yeah. But you don't get anything else. So you do need a certain amount of light. Other than that, like, there's not a lot of advice because the plants differ so much in what they need. The only other requirement is that you be like a reasonably responsible person who won't forget to water them for too long.
Yeah.
Either that or set up your hydroponics. Like, you know, be
There you
genius about it.
Well,
Well,
I mean,
yeah, most of our audience not the kind of people who remember to water plants.
so they should get a succulent, right?
Right. So the thing with the succulents is they need a lot of light. And in New York, it's kind of hard to get the amount that most succulents need. So you will likely need to supplement your light with grow lights. And some grow lights, especially if you only have a couple of succulents, they look fine. They will emit like purple light. Some people don't like that, but some people do. And like your succulent will probably do well. It might still be green. Maybe it'll change like shades a little bit. And then if you want to be a crazy person, you can buy lots of white lights that are very like intense and emit a lot of light.
This will ruin your sleeping schedule.
Yeah, it's not good for that. Like I said, crazy person. So I don't even necessarily like recommend that. That's if you're like a specific brand of weird.
There's definitely people that they did plant tours. I've watched a lot of plant tours, and they're living in not even like a plant store. Like I don't know where they're living, but it's just full of plants. They're living in this backdrop.
Yeah.
So
I mean, my apartment is kind of starting to reach that type of state, I think, and it's pretty cool. It's not too hard to do. Like, you hang plants and you put them near your windows, and you might have to get a little creative with the layout because they do need light. But
what's your hanging plant?
Oh, that's the pothos.
That's a pothos.
Yeah, pothos makes for like a nice hanging plant.
Okay.
A lot of restaurants and bars actually seem to use it, probably because it's low maintenance and it looks good.
A very hardy kind of ivy sort of hanging plant.
Yeah, I have it's in the list of
Pothos.
like the ones, the Instagrammable ones somewhere in here.
Yes.
One factoid I came across for like advice for new plant owners is that the soil that plants come in from, like when you get them at Home Depot or even Etsy or whatever, is often
I told you this.
It's super spongy because it's meant to survive long periods without watering if it sits on a shelf in a store.
How dare you steal my fact that I told you? Go for it.
And then, but this is not actually ideal, like potting soil. You shouldn't keep the plants in it because it's going to actually hold on to too much water and will give the plant root rot when you start regularly watering it.
Also,
so you should consistently repot your plants after you get them from the store or whatever.
Actually, I forgot this too, but like bugs are a thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
How do you deal with bugs?
So I have this stuff called diatomaceous earth.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Stuff?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's used, I think, in animal feed, and it's like not harmful to humans. Although it does come in a very, very fine powder. So you should wear a mask. Which is funny. Like we have those
You've
now.
got a bunch of
Yeah.
I actually bought like an N95 mask
for this,
like not even for like the reasons.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So
that's great. I love that.
I wear that in my home when I am putting the earth stuff on my plants, and it works pretty well. Like eat the flies, because you get those like little flies. It makes them go away. There are other types of pests that you need to quarantine plants for if you're getting them from someplace that you don't trust. And I think the advice for that usually is like if you were to go out on the street and pick up a plant, which friends I have done this, you should quarantine it for 40 days.
Whoa.
At a minimum. Keep it away from your other plants.
Everyone thinks like 2 weeks is bad, right? 40 days.
Yeah, because if your other plants get like mealybugs or something, you'll be very sad.
Yeah.
And so will the plants.
That was happening with the lucky bamboo plants a while ago, which is, like there was a shipment or something that came to New York, just the bamboo plants, and they had some kind of parasite.
Yep.
And it was
Yep.
ironic because it's lucky bamboo, and then people would take like this one bamboo
Nope.
home, and it wasn't lucky.
Yep.
And ravage the rest
Yeah.
of the bamboos.
Isn't that how the American chestnut trees died?
Yes, the American
Oh,
chestnut
yeah.
trees died from, I think, some fungus infection. And it was particularly brutal because it not only would kill off the chestnut tree, but it would infect like the stumps even. So even new trees that sprouted would be like doomed. It's very sad.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's sad.
That's why chestnuts roasting on an open fire is no one's ever experienced it. There's a song about it.
Wait, there's not real like those aren't.
There are living chestnuts in America, but the entire like eastern seacoast, like from Maine down to like the Carolinas, was covered in these absolutely massive trees that
Yeah.
dropped
It's sad.
tons of nuts every year that are apparently delicious. The sweet chestnut is what it's called, because there's the horse chestnut, which is a bullshit
poisonous,
plant,
right?
which is poisonous, which doesn't even look like a chestnut. Ariel and I were doing some botany walks
We
over
were.
the weekend down in
We were
Virginia,
using the plant
down
app.
in Maryland, and we came across a horse chestnut. And I was like, these are spiny and they're poisonous. These
Yeah.
fruits are terrible.
Worthless.
Yeah, why would it be called
Yeah.
a horse chestnut?
So this guy Nikolai Vavilov, it was like his idea to do seed banks for this reason.
To preserve.
To have like a
Yes.
copy of every seed, like a seed library basically, so that there wouldn't be, so like the chestnut, it's going extinct, and you're like, it's cool, we have the copies of that, and he was like, I guess the reverse Johnny Appleseed, right?
Okay, we read. There's some experiment that's been going for now like a century or two that's going to continue forever, basically, where there's some preserved seeds that are like thousands of years old already, that they found in archaeological dig, and every like 20 years they go out and plant one of them
Oh wow, that's crazy.
to basically see how long can seeds lie dormant
Yeah.
and still blossom. And
That's
I forget,
cool.
it's some like
It's
You know,
still
early agricultural, like way pre-industrial revolution, like crop, right? Like long before like plant breeding really took off, which is cool. And I think now the record, as far as it's like over 2,000 years or something. Seeds can lie dormant forever.
That's pretty
that's
cool.
so crazy. Yeah.
That's
Wow.
wild.
The- So this guy, again, racism.
No
he
way.
Wasn't,
He was
No,
racist.
he wasn't racist, but his work, his
Everybody
work
in plants.
got thwarted by like I don't know, like Stalin or something. It, like was like, I don't want you doing like genetic. It was just like
There is a global seed bank right now in Iceland, right?
yeah, that's his seed. That was from his seed bank.
And they're worried because the permafrost is melting.
So that was like, I guess, propagated. I don't know. That was, I guess, propagated the right.
They took his idea.
It comes from his, but a lot of like those seeds are like the children of like his original seed bank, and he was executed by firing squad
Oh my
because of they tried him for treason
Oh my god.
about the seeds.
For trees.
Because there was this other scientist who was a jerk who like tattled on him and was like, oh my god, he's studying like genetics
Stalin killed all the intellectuals.
Yeah,
Russia,
I know.
I mean, rough times.
So he was executed, and then he gave his seed bank to I think 10 scientists. He was like, you take some, you take some, you take some, and three out of the 10 of those scientists died from starvation that winter because they were watching the seeds, and they were so dedicated, like they didn't even eat any of the seeds. They died.
Not like a seed's gonna give you many nutrients anyway.
They had a lot of it was a bank. I mean, I think, So they were very dedicated to like preserving his seeds, and the Iceland one comes from that original group.
That's pretty cool.
Seeds are pretty wild. Yeah, you can save a little genetic copy of yourself that's going to be 2,000 years from now will still be viable. It's pretty wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Aw. Do you want to switch places?
Yeah, sure.
So in like the center.
Okay.
We're
Sweet.
evolving.
Well, Ariel's gonna, I think, now tell us about the top houseplants
The top house.
based on her research on Instagram.
Yeah, based on my research on Instagram.
Thank you for
These-
joining us, Lily,
Thank you so much. Oh, where can
with the succulent corner. Where can our listeners find you?
Will find me, like social media find me.
or
Well, if you wanna
give them
tell
your
them,
address. I
I
mean,
don't
what?
know.
Oh,
where-
and, I mean, so
Give
I live
them-
in PH4B. Lily Wolf is my Instagram.
Okay, and you do sometimes post pictures of your succulents.
Yeah.
I do, yes,
Okay,
to the stories.
nice.
They're really beautiful. I haven't even seen them recently, but you have a really great collection.
Thanks.
I think you should get an air plant because I know you like little shells and they can grow in the shells. You can combine. Yeah,
It's cool.
I think air plants might be my next.
Their plants can grow in shells. Yeah.
I just think they're so cool because like I'm Ariel and they're air plants. I'm like I don't need roots. I can grow in the air. Like I live off
Oh.
the air. You know, they're like me. Their skin is dry. they actually they need to be misted.
Wait, aren't orchids an example?
Of air plants?
Don't orchids grow on other whatever? They're that type of
Oh,
plant. For
yeah,
structure,
okay.
they grow on top of another plant.
So yes, they
and they're not
are.
parasites. It's like
They are.
Just, yeah.
They are called. I was like, I have the.
You can't shush me until you have the word ready.
They're
So say epiphytes.
epiphytes.
That's it.
Yeah. So they don't steal anything from the other.
No, they just stand on their
Things.
shoulders.
But like air plants, you can put them on wood, in a seashell, in your hair. They don't. Apparently, the oil from your hands,
On totem poles.
yeah,
Ornamental.
Pinterest boards.
Penis statues.
Yep,
Pretty much anything.
yeah, you can, and on other plants, you can put them on, which is where they normally grow on the tops of. Well, there's some that grow in the desert, and there's some that grow on the tops of trees in the rainforest.
Yeah.
So if you can tell by their coloring what they need, so if they're like if they're more green, like true deep green, then they probably need a little less light
Just read
but
the
more
instruction.
water.
Read the instructions that come with your
and
plants.
if they're like silverier looking, it's like the reverse of that. But they do need to be either you can mist them all the time, or you can submerge them once a week. You can just like submerge them so they can get their water, because it's like it's simulating like a giant rainstorm.
Yeah, anything I found reading Wikipedia, or they'll grow in like puddles on tops of like other large trees. But yeah, a really interesting thing, because Wikipedia has like, I guess, a global like group of writers, is that they talk about, they're like, yes, like, unfortunately many in the United States don't understand hydroponic growing, and it hasn't really caught on there. Like, and I was like, what?
Yeah.
Like, apparently the Americas are very backwards, actually, when it comes to hydroponic, like, houseplants, and hydroponic, like, plant cultivation is really popular in Asia. And I guess in part because then you don't need soil or dirt in your home. You can just grow a
Right.
plant and water. It fixes a lot of issues with pests, but, like, it just hasn't really caught on in America. We all have big-ass houses with, like, big pots with plants that we like water from the top down.
Yeah, or there's another way to water your plants is bottom watering,
Oh yeah.
which sometimes is good for the ones that need a little less water.
Do you need a trough?
No, you can just put water in the bottom, like in the dish.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so here's
And then a capillary
Then-
action will pull it up.
yeah. So yeah, this is a Christmas cactus that I have, and
It had flowers right around Christmas.
It did,
too. But
yeah.
now lately it's been putting all its energy into growing new leaves.
into growing these leaves. And the reason I was saying before, and after researching plants a lot recently, I was like, oh yeah, it's actually probably getting a little bit too much sunlight, because so some plants will do this thing where they grow towards the sun, and that means that you don't have enough light.
Oh.
But this one has actually been growing. I keep rotating it because I want it to get. This one is right up against a very, very sunny window, and it's actually been growing into the room. So I'm like, oh, okay, maybe it's like a little too, and it's a darker of like a succulent. It's like a darker green. So I'm like, okay, maybe I can set it back from the window a teensy bit. And then, yeah, we went away for the weekend and I gave it a bunch of water and I'm like feeling down into the soil and I'm like, ooh.
It's not happy now.
Well, it's still a little wet. So I need to like maybe put some new soil on it that's not so wet. But oh yeah, another thing about pots too, like ceramic, if you get like ceramic pots, they will absorb a lot of water and kind of like continuously keep the plant moist. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Like if you don't want if you're afraid of like root rot and stuff, maybe don't get a ceramic pot. I think the self-watering ones from Target are like really popular Instagrammable sleek pot that people are liking that are like plastic. There's some kind of recycled plastic. Yeah. So and then another. Oh, is our guest leaving?
Yep.
She's out to check on her succulents. Thank you. So we were talking about like the clay pots, right? And then when you were talking about the soil mixtures from like the stores, you can also tell if the soil mixture isn't quite right. Like if you pour water into the plant and then it like immediately goes out the bottom, but then you stick your finger in the soil and it hasn't like penetrated, you might need a softer mix. Because that'll often happen. People will be like, oh my God, I'm watering it like, and then the water goes out the bottom, but the plant is still looking dry. It might be because the soil again is like compact.
You got bad soil.
Yeah.
You'll break it up.
And people get really crazy with like the mixtures that they come up with. I don't know. The Christmas cactus. Yeah. Okay. Christmas cactus is like pretty easy to take care of if you have sun.
Yeah, and you've got it in some pretty like Western looking like wet soil. So it's not too grainy.
Yeah, I think I need to like give it a slightly drier soil.
Give it some more gritty
After
soil.
doing the research, like it's gonna live, but I think it'll be happier if I was gonna say if I translate it, if I transplant it.
Cool.
Yeah.
So the last cool factoid I read about plants.
Are we gonna go through the list of the popular ones?
You can go through the list. I don't know how compelling it will be in an audio format, but let me drop my last piece of knowledge. Then you can do the countdown of the top 10 most popular social media plants, and that'll take us to the end of the show. So my cool factoid was that houseplants have been shown to actually absorb volatile organic compounds in the air. So they actually do. People say they purify the air. They're good to have, but like NASA has done research and studies on this.
But there's no air in space.
In certain plants. Well, I hope there is in the space station.
True. Okay.
So particularly for the astronaut, they're like, oh shit, like what if stuff outgasses or like chemicals or benzene or something like leaks into the cabin? Oh, no. They're like, what could we do? Or it's a phenomenon that's happened a bunch of times. It's known as sick building syndrome, where people working in an office building will just get sick a lot and get headaches.
Oh, there was a guy in your office who died from that.
There's a guy in my office who died.
Because you guys didn't have plants.
Yeah. So
Bloomberg.
It actually is exactly that. How dare you? We don't name names at this point. There actually is
Google.
But it is exactly that. There will be generally it's new buildings, but there will be either because of like the paint or plastics used in the construction of the building or something, stuff that's outgassing slowly that puts like trace amounts of volatile organic compounds in the air, and people like inhale it and get sick or like get constant headaches or whatever, and like waves of people calling in sick. It's bad. The building makes you sick. So it turns out houseplants can fix that.
What?
And they've studied it, and the plant actually they like put trace amounts of like these poisonous chemicals like toluene and like benzene and like stuff that would like mess you up if you inhaled it at low concentrations for a long period of time. and the houseplants just absorb it. And pothos is like a real popular one. And I think they also tested snake plants.
Snake plants. Everyone
and they're like
says
really
snake
great
plants.
at purifying the air.
They look like tongues. Like they're just like.
What's cool is the plant. They capture these like poisonous like organic compounds, and they just break them down and use the carbon as food. So they just eat it, basically. So the plants are like totally cool with it. So I was like, wow, the plants really, and it's like a substantial difference. They'll reduce it by like 50% or more in these buildings that would otherwise make people sick. So, office plants, very important actually.
Except, make sure that you know what kind of lighting situation you have in there.
Sure.
You know. So all plants do need some kind of.
And if you and all your coworkers are all watering the plant without telling each other, then it's gonna
bad.
It's gonna die.
But I think a lot of people, they're like, oh, overhead light is fine. You know, that's fine. But they do need they do need some kind of sunlight.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to make sure that they're getting some kind of actual sun and not just like the light in your house. A plant can't live without sun.
A lot of office buildings have pretty good lighting situations these days.
Yeah. Oh yeah, all the open work.
The open work plants. Yeah, your
plants.
WeWork probably has windows, and you can put your snake plant in the window.
Yeah.
All right, so let's do the rundown.
Okay. Oh yeah, and then we should say what our favorite plants are.
Okay.
Like to grow, or like the ones, the coolest looking ones.
To worship.
Yeah. So, there's the Fiddle Leaf Fig.
So these are. What is this list? This is like plants that are currently the most popular, the most Instagrammable.
Both. I think because there's a real plant culture out there. It's crazy. I think especially during it's wild.
It's wildflowers.
During I think during quarantine, people got super into it. But I've noticed there are all these videos. There's like my plant tour, my top plants. There's also plants I regret buying. You know,
this is like a YouTube channel.
These are the videos that you're gonna find. They're like these are common like throughout these plants. There's like the plant guy and like the crazy plant guy and like crazy plant lady.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have the plants they regret, and then there are videos where they're like my problem.
Plants I grew.
They're like it's a problem. This is why
plants that abused me.
Oh. There are videos where they're like, I'm an addict, like I'm addicted to buying plants. Yeah.
Okay.
And then there are some people where you're like, you live
plant rehab.
You live in because I can understand. I mean, it's something that could essentially live like forever, pretty much. And so everyone that you get, you're like, okay. But I guess they have plant swaps. For that purpose. Also, if
if you love something, let it go.
Yeah, or give it to your friend.
All right.
There's also if you live in New York or Brooklyn, there's the Sill, which is a plant store in Brooklyn, and I listened to one of the owners, Chris, talk a lot about the houseplant basics, and they have classes there, and he's really knowledgeable and like interesting to listen to. So maybe buy your plants in person from there, if not Etsy.
The guideline that I saw, it's what is it? For Gen Z, plants are the new pets. Pets are the new children.
Oh yeah, and then stuffed animals are the new plants.
Are the new plants, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So tell us our top 10.
So you have the Fiddle Leaf. I think this is more the top 10. There's the Fiddle Leaf Fig. But let's just rate it. Let's rate it. Because if you're a plant person, you know this already. So.
Okay.
So what do you think?
A Ficus Lyrada.
Yeah.
All right. So it's like a mini fig. Right? Figs are known for having giant leaves.
Yes. And these guys they can get really big. I've seen them in this, there's like this one, my dermatologist has one, and it's enormous. It's so big, and it has these little strings that are like keeping the leaves from schlumping over because the stem is so small under the leaves, and it's like it's really cool looking.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's I don't.
But these are
I don't
apparently.
Want to go straight to 10. Let's call that an 8 out of 10. That's a good plant.
This is the. Then there's the Chinese money plant, or the Pulea peperomides.
The Pulea
Peperomia.
peperomioides.
Yeah.
All right. Minimalist and contemporary.
It looks kind of like a bunch of pancakes.
Looks like a lot of lily pads.
Lily pads.
It's like a 3D
Yeah.
lily pad feature. I guess you could show people. You could show the good people of Instagram what we're talking about here.
Yeah, so that's the peperomiads, right?
Yeah.
Um,
All right. So that's an okay plant.
it's an okay plant.
I mean, I'm going to give that a 6.
You're gonna give that.
If that, I mean, that's generous.
Then
All
there's
right.
the spider plant.
Cool plant. It's kind of like a fern. No, it's not a fern. It looks almost like a grass.
It looks
It's
like
got
a
these
grass.
long
It looks like a
tendrils.
seagrass kind of.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it has, I think it's called variegation, which is like the yellow, and it's different colors on the same
Like the
leaf.
snake plant. It's
Yes.
cool. It's got a yellow outline around the
People
leaf.
go bananas for that, apparently. Like, that's like a thing. People are like, the variegation. Oh, the variegation, honey.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's an alright plant.
Oh,
It's also a 6.
the peace lily.
Peace lily goes all the way back to like the 60s, was like a very like in plant. When houseplants
Yeah.
first took off, people were all about the peace lily. Good at air purifying.
Looks like a vagina
classic houseplant.
with
People
a
love
giant
them.
clit.
Has some cool flowers too.
Right, doesn't it?
Graceful white spathes, they're called.
We actually had let's see, Spathilium wallisi. It sounds like a Star Wars character.
Okay.
We had one, a really big one actually, when I was a kid. I think my mom still has it, and she moves it outside.
Oh, yeah, classic 70s household plant.
Yeah, you mean 90s?
Classic 2000s household plant.
I mean, maybe she's also extremely young. Was not born. She wasn't even around in the 70s. I would take dirt out of the plant soil, and I would just throw it on the floor, and then people would look at me, and I would like smirk. That was my relationship to that plant.
Wow, that's cool. You're a cool kid.
Yeah. I would just I'd be like, air plant.
All right, let's see this air plant.
The Tillandsia. I really want one. It's related to the pineapple.
Oh.
Did you know that?
No,
Yeah.
because pineapples.
Doesn't it look like the top
pineapples
of a
are like a, crop that grows in the ground.
I don't think.
Or no, they grow in a bush. Pineapples grow off a bush, right?
Yeah.
I think that's their deal. They're not like potatoes or carrots. They grow on a bush.
Doesn't it look like the top of a pineapple?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's how it evolved.
Yeah.
Like one day, it fell off.
It's a part of the pineapple with an attitude.
Yeah, it's like no
It's
one
the
eats
top.
me. That's okay. I don't need roots.
All right, so it's like if you just grow like a person's haircut as a plant.
Yeah.
All right.
I want to give this one. I want it. Rating.
Can you show the picture of the air plant
Oh,
for
yeah.
people? Because look at this saucy potting.
It doesn't need any.
There's no
it's
soil.
Just like,
it's
look
just
at that.
growing in a glass.
It's like a little head, a little hair.
Yeah.
It's a little hair in a glass.
So that has breathed new life into the terrarium hobby, apparently.
Yeah.
Because you don't even need soil.
Yeah. Oh, so pristine. I love it.
Yes, it needs a heavy spritz.
So that's for people who really want to bond, like, they're like, I want to look at it and, like, care for it every day, but you really can just dunk it in water and then dry it out once a week.
Mm.
And that's because you want to submerge it to really open up those water buttholes in the leaves.
Stomata. Stoma?
I think that's a part of a flower,
Alright.
actually. Okay, so... Oh, aloe. I actually used to have an aloe plant.
Okay.
Yeah.
We know about this one. Everybody knows aloe.
Yeah, aloe! It's just a little guy. It
Yeah,
kind
it's
of
got-
looks like
it has
an
little
eggplant,
spots too.
but he needs a pot.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're also kind of succulent-esque, so they need sandy soil. And you really can take a little piece of the plant off and, like, put it on your, like, cuts and like, you can put it on pimples, too, and it's really good. You can also eat it. It tastes very sour, very bitter.
Yeah, there is the aloe drink that you can get, and like
That has so much sugar in it to like cover the taste.
yeah, and like various like Puerto Rican and Mexican delis in New York, you can get the aloe drink.
The
And
aloe
it's like,
drink.
yeah, I think it has a ton of sugar, but it's like it has little chunks of aloe in it actually, and you're like, this is probably healthy. Yo, they're totally called stomata. I knew it. It means mouths
Oh, they look
in
like
Greek.
buttholes.
They resemble tiny mouths.
Oh yeah, mouths. It was They're
Closing
Greek.
the
You
stone
know
when
that
the plant
what they
has
mean.
enough carbon dioxide, the plant can preserve its water and prevent itself from drying out. I knew it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. There you go. Wow.
All right, continue.
Mouth. They don't
Tell
look
me
like
about
mouths.
the jade plant.
The jade plant. The Crassula ovata.
All right.
Yeah. It says it's every bit as pretty as those trendy faux plants you see at the hobby store.
But it's not fake.
But
Because
it's
it looks
not.
like a fake plant.
It
It's very
does.
deep green.
Yeah.
Shiny leaves.
Deep and shiny
So
leaves.
this is one that probably doesn't need a lot of light.
Well, this one though, it says it does. So this is more of a succulent-y kind of thing,
Oh.
I guess. Yeah, it says that it needs light and not a ton of water.
Oh, well there goes our theory. I guess if it's waxy, we said it didn't need a lot of water because it's like, just like, get off me. I
Well, you
don't
could
care.
also another thing you can tell is the root system, right? So when you transplant it, when you bring it home, what you're gonna do, succulents don't have like a crazy. Their root system is very shallow because they don't drink that much.
Mm-hmm.
So you can look at that as well.
Okay. All right. Let's moving on.
Then the African violet, the Saint Paulia.
This is thus far the most colorful plant. It's an actual flowering plant.
Yes. Oh yeah, I guess the main reason people don't put wild flowers in their home is because they die and you have to replant them.
Yeah.
They're perennials?
Flowering, perennials die once a year. Yeah.
Yeah.
And and they flower because like either they're trying to get, insects or birds to come like eat their seeds or whatever, or like or bees to come by to hang out to like pollinate stuff. But flowering or making a flower takes a lot of energy.
Yeah.
So a plant often does that sort of towards the end of its life.
How crazy would that be if we just like if old people were just like, okay, I'm gonna have a baby now. Like in the nursing home, they're like on their deathbed and they're like, it's like boop, boop, and like a baby comes out. Like that's literally what plants are.
Mm-hmm. That is.
But also if the old person looked really hot right before they die.
That's true. They really get into their,
They
their
just look
final flowering. They look
amazing.
amazing.
They shoot out a baby and then they die. Like, yes, I'm going to start hanging out in nursing homes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean nursery homes, right? Because like plants.
Nice.
Yeah. So they don't need indirect light, the African violet, and they need light, regular moisture. So it sounds like they're pretty like basic to take care of, actually. So that might be a good beginner if you want a flowering plant.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
Yeah.
And then here it comes. Snake plant.
The snake plant, the Sansevieria
Trifasciata.
Trifasciata.
Oh, trifasciata, I think you think that's like 3 color.
Oh, maybe.
I don't know. Fasciitis is like, what is fasciitis?
Connective
Connective
tissue.
tissue.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Try something.
Is it like, it's sometimes called
Show them the plant though.
stepmother's tongue or something like that.
Really?
Yeah.
Rude. Yeah, it's cool because it's a plant that has its own little highlighter around the leaves of the plant.
That's the variegation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It kind of makes it stand out.
It's just
Makes it
really
pop.
funny to like watch the Instagram like models just be like use all these scientific like they're like pronouncing them better than us. Yeah.
Trifasciata. Yeah, that's important.
Yeah, they're like the variegation's really good on this plant. Oh my god. The bromelade, which I'm gonna guess is related to air plants and pineapples.
I think bromeliad.
Bromeliad? Yeah. Oh yeah, because they grow nestled in trees, so they're related.
Oh, these epiphytes.
The epiphytes.
These are epiphytes. Orchid potting medium works well. So it's like a variety of, similar to the orchid.
Yeah.
Maybe is an orchid.
Well, I guess they look more jungly though. They look more like a jungly plant than a deserty, so I would assume orchid. We went to the orchid exhibit right before quarantine.
Pretty good orchid exhibit.
Yeah.
Oh, there's the
lucky bamboo,
as you said, diseased.
Yes. They're called the Dracaena. Sandaria. That's like this, probably like dragon something, the dragon plant. Oh yeah, and they can grow in water.
Yeah.
So I guess they don't need soil.
It's also a special bamboo that will cease to grow once you clip the top, unlike outdoor bamboo, which grows like an inch a day and is insanely unmanageable.
Oh yeah!
Will take over your apartment.
Shout outs to your mom.
Shout outs to my mom and her out of control bamboo in Hawaii.
Yeah. That's like in Crouching Tiger. They're like on the bamboo.
Mm-hmm.
They're standing on it.
Great plant.
Ivy. Hedera helix. That's such a cool name.
Wait, do we have to go through this whole list? We're at number 12 already. I thought it was a top 10.
It's like 17. I'm just reading. Right. Ivy.
Right.
I had an ivy.
Ivy's boring.
Cool.
Let's move on. We all know that.
The dumb cane plant.
All right. Yeah, it's just like the same coloring as aloe, but not as cool.
It has a crazy... Oh, basil, which I'm going to grow. We didn't talk about herbs. Herbs are really... Basil and mint are really easy to grow.
Yeah, that's another episode, I suppose.
Yeah.
We didn't even talk about herb gardens.
Yeah, but basil and mint are really, really easy to grow. For the summer. You can make your own, like, mint julep.
Yeah.
And they're really... Like, I just bought some seeds, and they were like 69 cents. Yeah.
Yeah, herbs are the leaves of the plant, and spices are the seeds.
Yes. Unless you dry out the basil, and then it's both.
I think it's still an herb. It's just a dried herb.
Oh, okay. It's not a spice. It's a seasoning.
They're all seasonings in the class of seasoning.
The umbrella
just
plant.
Telling you what the difference between spice and herbs.
So there's the umbrella plant.
Looks like an umbrella. Ella.
It also has the different colors.
Crotons are cool plants.
Crotons.
Can we throw the croton up?
Yeah.
Let the people see the croton.
Codinium.
Both because it's got a cool name. It's sort of like a very postmodern plant. It's got clean lines, great colors. Croton is my 10 out of 10. That's my fave plant on the list here.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we could grow them like really well.
They offer a colorful petal.
Philodendron.
Yes.
Yeah, it's the hanging basket, the hanging garden.
Yeah, philodendrons are a very hardy, kind of ivy trailing vine plant.
Yeah, and there you go. That's the 17 most popular ones voted by the spruce. And I guess let's end. Well, before we plug, what's your favorite plant? Like of all house plants, like
I love the croton's my favorite house plant. I think my favorite plant overall, I really love a saguaro cactus.
Yes! Oh my god, I love those too.
We talked about the succulents, but I love a good
cactuses.
Hands up.
Yes!
Cactus style. That's like your classical cactus.
I love those
They grow up to like 20 feet.
They do.
They live a really long time. Yeah, they're spiny. They're just your classic like Southwestern American cactus. Those are great plants.
Yeah, I love those. Apparently they're like weeds in Arizona, and some people have them removed from their home.
Got these cactuses from there. There's a cactus in the den. Got them just like popping up out of the floor.
It's like, whoa!
Call the exterminator.
Yeah.
The saguaro.
The saguaro man. Instead of like Mosquito Joe, it's like Saguaro Sam.
See, branches popping up. And
yeah, a lot of the landscapers, Arizona like landscapers, they say that they add to their own collection when they've been called to like remove.
Yeah,
one.
I mean they should be easy to remove, I guess, because their roots
are really
1 or 2 feet deep, and you're just like,
just move it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about you? What are your favorite plants of the episode?
Of the episode, well, my new obsession with air plants. We're gonna get one. I love it. Yeah, I definitely relate more to the succulents because, I mean, I am thirsty all the time and I get cold very easily. Mm-hmm. And I like the sun. Yeah. Right. So
you're a succulent.
I would definitely.
And you're a fan of the epiphytes.
Yeah, because that's me. I'm not a parasite. I just like to ride on like things that are taller than me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Standing on the shoulders of giants.
Yep.
Is what the epiphytes are doing.
So I'll get an air plant and report back. And then if people want to dance like plants,
Dance like a plant.
or if, for all the house plants or the house music plant people, what can they do?
The deep house music plants. We have a plant rave this
What?
Saturday, 9 p.m.
Has there ever been
I've
such a
prepared a
thing?
phenomenal set that features succulents. It features rainforest and tribal vibes, and it features songs about the sun that are uplifting about personal growth, about
Yay.
plant growth. Yeah, so that's gonna be Saturday night at 9 p.m. I'm gonna DJ it. I have some amazing time lapse, succulent, blooming growth backdrops that I'm gonna be playing. Might bring this guy or some sort of plastic facsimile of a plant. And Ariel is going to be embodying the plants.
Yes.
I suppose you'll be an air plant for all three sets, but you'll be
I'll be
channeling the
different-
vibes of different
yeah.
ecosystems.
Yeah, I have different plants in mind that I'm going to embody in different apparatuses. So tune in. Yeah, and
So-
then we'll be back next week talking about something different.
We'll be back next week, 8 p.m. for the chat. Thanks, everybody who watched, who's listening to the podcast. Leave us a 5-star review, please, on Apple Music or iTunes or whatever.
Spotify.
Just out there.
Yeah. And if you want to suggest stuff, you can contact
If you want us
us.
to talk about something, if you want to be a guest on a future episode, let us know.
Yeah, only if you're like an expert, like Lily Wolf expert. Like if you can be at that caliber, then yes.
Yeah. You know.
Otherwise, we'll just
You know.
we'll do the research for you and we'll talk about your subject.
All right, let's play it out with
Okay.
little bossa nova tropical tunes.